Welcome and welcome back. It's so good to be together with you all again. Happy Tuesday. Happy Learning Collaborative Day. Happy seeming like fall, but still summer outside. It's so good again to be in community. My name is Joy Thompson. I use she, her pronouns. I currently serve as a director of programs for the Building Community and Liberation Focus areas here at Youth Collaboratory. And I am so excited for today's session. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Before we get started, we would love for you all to update your name so that we can see who you are. Be sure to add your pronouns, your organization, your location, if you would like. And in the chat, we would love to have just a quick icebreaker question, which is, what is something that you are looking forward to in the fall? And a spoiler alert, I will tell you mine. It is pumpkins, pumpkin patches, cinnamon. I am the person with the cinnamon broom from Trader Joe's 2 weeks ago. And I am the person pulling off at the side of the road at the pumpkin patch. What are some of the things that you are looking forward to for this fall? Corn maze, pumpkin picking, apple picking, and Halloween. Nice. It sounds like all the fun at one time. Hoodies, yes. Sweater weather. Becoming a grandmother. Congratulations, Amber Knight. All the mini pumpkins. The weather, warm drinks in the fall, walking around with the leaves, especially as a Miami native. Nice seasons. Yeah, California. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. So when those leaves change, it's a big to do. Halloween Disney movies. Yeah, I love it. All of this is making me want to have a couple apple cider. Apple picking, apple cider, fall leaves, and pumpkin pie. Hocus pocus. I have a group of friends that every fall we watch Hocus Pocus together. I think I got it memorized. The weather, the leaves, chic fall outfits, and apple cider. I definitely have some boots that I've been waiting to wear for the fall. I love that. Yeah. So keep them coming. What are you looking forward to for this season? If this is your first time in the space, feel free to share a little bit about yourself in the chat. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for joining us. Yes, cute boots. They are a thing. It's like, if I'm gonna be cold, I might as well be cute and a little chilly. Yeah, California, we have to wear them year round, but I do a little bit of visiting to the East Coast, and you simply have to have them. It gets really cold over there. So shout out to you all's fortitude that deal with that really, really cold weather. And I know you all have some extra cute boots because of it. So welcome back. We are so happy to be again in community with you again. Just a couple of reminders about why we're here. So we're here and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. We know that this is a really busy season for community-based programs, for residential programs, for those working alongside youth and working with youth and youth with school and all the things going on. So thank you for taking time to be in community with us as we work towards and addressing trafficking of girls with a focus on Black girls. We are committed to the possibility of a future free of violence and exploitation of all kinds, and we recognize that centering those who are and who have been disproportionately impacted will strengthen this work. A reminder that we have developed our group norms for this, and I'll add them to the chat for our reference. But just to talk through them briefly is to take space, make space. I'm definitely one of the people that has to make space. You'll often hear me joke, I counted to 10 so that I can give space for other people to speak up. Know that everyone brings something to the table, even if it's just an appetite, that sometimes we're going to disagree. And when we do that, we want to do that respectfully and work the problem or the issue and not the person. Agree to challenge each other and understand more deeply, and listen to understand. Always take care of yourself. If we were in person, it'd be one of those, do you need to walk around and have this conversation? Do you need to leave and come back, take some deep breaths, drink some water, have a snack? And we ask that learning leaves the room, but that stories stay, so that we don't talk about other people's experiences that we learned about in this space, but just the things that we learned. We acknowledge that oppression and racism are real and present in the spaces that we hold together. So again, thank you all for joining us. And now, to get all of that stuff out of the way, it is my honor to introduce the facilitators for today, the Youth Collaboratory Girls Action Board team. Thank you, Gab, for being here and for facilitating. I'm going to pass it to Deja Petway to get us started.
Yeah, so thank you so much. So hello and welcome everyone, and thank you all so much for joining this Learning Collaborative. Y'all, I'm excited for today. I'm stoked. I'm excited to get started and just learn who's in the room. But on today, we'll be diving deeper into a discussion around authentic youth engagement. What does that look like? What are some of those barriers and considerations that we should be considering? But before we get started, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. I want to dive in and have some brief introductions to the team. So I'll start with me. My name is Deja Petway, but I do go by Deja Petway. My pronouns are she, her. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. So yes, the weather out here is being funky, per usual. But I implement my passion and resilience from my lived expertise to my work. I was a former national youth consultant, a youth catalyst team member, and now I'm a training and capacity building manager with Youth Collaboratory and one of the GAB leads. I have expertise in foster care, youth homelessness, the commercial sexual exploitation of children, mentoring youth impacted by trafficking, and youth leadership program design and implementation. I have been involved with many local advocacy programs, including a youth advisory board, where I supported other young leaders and advocated for change in the youth homelessness system. Through my work here with Youth Collaboratory, I have worked to advocate and promote policy change, and have conducted a significant advocacy work at the national level. And I've done this by providing in-person and virtual trainings, resources, and technical assistance to organizations, both locally and nationally, to assist them in establishing authentic relationships with young people, and preventing and addressing sexual exploitation of youth and young adults and Black girls. So I'm excited to be here in this space and excited to pass it over to the team. And I'll pass it to Lauren.
Hey everybody, my name is Lauren Long. I'm a certified community health worker. Was born and raised in central Indianapolis, but I'm currently living in Jacksonville, Florida. So it's still pretty hot out here and humid. It's hurricane season, so it's pretty humid out. But yeah, a little bit about me. Through experience and educational acquisition, I have been very blessed to have the opportunity to work closely with other young adults who are wanting to advocate for improvement in the overall socioeconomic system in America, specifically for Black and Indigenous youth. Through my life's journey, I underwent a lot of different situations involving child exploitation and forms of human trafficking. And so my experiences have driven my ambition to want to be a fighting voice for women and children around the world who continue to undergo these types of adversities. And aside from my philanthropic approach to young adults and youth homelessness with sexual exploitation of colored women and children, I also aspire to get my medical degree one day in neurology with a focal interest in socioeconomic stratification and victimology, and really using those skills to acquire new methods for logistical screenings and evaluation of the underserved populations at large. And I'll pass it on to Ms. Toyin.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, everyone. My name is Toyin Below, pronouns she, her, hers. I was born and raised in Waterbury, Connecticut. And a little bit about me, I'm currently a YCT GAV consultant here at Youth Collaboratory and a junior at UConn. So I'm currently on campus. I feel centered through music and enjoy playing basketball and volleyball in my spare time. I'm an ESL tutor and I volunteer to educate underserved populations about medical resources. I'm also a mental health advocate who started this work with hopes of instilling change in all systems that negatively impact Black girls and homeless and foster youth. And with that, I'll pass it on to Michaela.
Thank you, Toyin. I'm Michaela. My pronouns are she and her. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut, and I also attend the University of Connecticut. I'm a part of the Youth Catalyst team and the Girls Action Board team. Additionally, I am currently getting my Sexuality and Human Development Studies degree while also matriculating my Master's of Public Health. I'm a reproductive justice enthusiast who is also passionate about sexual health education. Additionally, I serve on various clubs on campus pertaining to LGBTQ rights, and I'm also the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority on campus. I have lived expertise, and I'm super passionate about children with incarcerated parents and system involved and bereaved youth. And I'm going to pass it to Kiana.
Hello, my name is Kiana Johnson, she, her pronouns. I'm located in Los Angeles, but originally I'm from Philadelphia, born and raised. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, as well as a technical assistant and activist. I work with organizations like Youth Collaboratory to help strive for a better present and future for marginalized communities such as Black girls who have been historically underprivileged in our society. I partner with organizations nationwide, and when not doing this work, I am in school studying towards a bachelor's degree in behavioral sciences. I'll pass it back to Dasha.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Martine is also a part, Martine Jones is also a part of our Girls Action Board, but she was not able to be here. So we still want to acknowledge that she's a part of this team. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So for those of you who don't know who we are, this may be your first time meeting us, but we are the Girls Action Board. So we are a national leadership team made up of diverse representation of female identified Black girls ages 18 and 24 with lived expertise. We are deeply committed to creating pathways for Black girls to lead in this work that centers their healing, resilience, and professional development. And we focus on Black girls who are disproportionately represented in trafficking, and we create space for their voices to be uplifted to the forefront of the field. And we do this by providing training and technical assistance to those organizations in the field that directly seek to serve them. Our team is dedicated to building capacity, authentic collaboration, and community. And we lead this work with our passion, pursue change, and we utilize power to support prevention and early intervention efforts in trafficking of Black girls. So enough of introductions. That is us. This is the lovely team. And I will go to the next slide to get us started with this presentation. So we're going to pass it to Toyin.
Thank you, Deja. And from this learning collaborative, we hope to leave you with an understanding of how to develop and understand youth engagement for Black girls and its core principles. We want you to be able to discuss barriers regarding equitable organization and inclusion of Black girls, understand the value of engagement and using authentic and equitable approaches as well as identifying opportunities for meaningful collaboration in your agency. And lastly, gain key takeaway strategies for consideration and implementation. And I will pass it back to Deja for the next slide.
Thank you, Toyin. So just really quickly want to go over some definitions. You're going to hear us say girl a lot in leadership, and we just wanted to really define what we mean by that. So for leadership is making people and situations better because of your presence and making that impact last long after you leave, right? So the work can begin at any age, regardless of a title or a role, like it does not matter to us. I mean, what we mean by girl is any girl who identifies as a girl, as well as non-binary, transgender, and any gender expansive view. So yeah, I'm just gonna start with some brief introductions and we can go into the next slide as to why do we even center Black girls. I'll pass it to Kiana, I'm sorry.
We know that young Black girls are disproportionately affected by sex trafficking. They experience high levels of trauma that often goes unaddressed. With adequate support and solutions that center Black girls, their healing, and their prevention, we will begin to approach sex trafficking proactively instead of reactively. We aim to have an in-depth discussion regarding Black girls who are victims of trafficking, who are at risk of becoming victims, and who are on a path to survivorhood, becoming survivors. Through shared and communal learning, we can break down the narrative surrounding Black girls and provide a necessary perspective to the conversation. Next slide to Michaela.
All right, so now we're moving on to the value of engagement of Black girls. Oftentimes we are left out of the conversation and aren't even given a seat at the table, which results in our visions, voices being left out of the conversation. So we're going to go over to some key reasons why we should be centering Black girls and using our platform to amplify their voices. One, because their help can dismantle systematic racism around policies which may be harmful to them. The inclusion of their voices are often underrepresented in leadership. Black girls will know where there are gaps in services since they may have experienced those themselves. It may advance the work by prioritizing those most impacted and marginalized. We bring unique perspectives and valuable insights from lived expertise, and we also enhance organizational culture. And I'll pass it back to Deja for the next slide.
Just working between two screens, having to go over to unmute myself. So when we think about the value of engagement, and thank you so much, Michaela, for talking into some of the points of why do we value the engagement of Black girls, right, in our organization. I found a really powerful video that I wanted to share with you all, and it really highlights just how powerful young Black girls' voices are and are able to be, and examine that through the creativity in this spoken word that you all are about to hear in 1 second when we play it. 1 second.
Thoughts. Dad was never home, and that's his fault. But they treated us like we were locked up too, as if we were found guilty for just being alive. But that's just what it is, isn't it? Scattered thoughts. The things I know. I know what jail sounds like, and I know that the canines there are why I'm so scared of dogs. I know that prisons are the only gated communities that I have ever seen. They even got security. Scattered thoughts. The things I know. Every month the food stamp card declined. It was never enough. Dad was never home, only he's locked up. But we were the ones imprisoned by the system, in the system. Scattered thoughts, the things I know. I know that it's hard to get into a homeless shelter unless you got kids. I know that fireworks and gunshots sound the same. I know that it's hard to get Section 8. And then once you get it, you can't let it go until you're fully established, because I know that it's hard to get back. Dad was never home, only he's locked up. But we were the ones imprisoned by the system, in the system. Scattered thoughts, the things I know. I know that they cut food stamps once the eldest child is 18. Or once you make a little more than you used to. I know that in order to keep government assistance, you have to keep up with the new paperwork they give out almost weekly, cause Dad was never home. I know that Walmart shoes last a good 2 weeks, but we wore them for months. I know that I teach my brothers not to walk with headphones in their ears, because they always have to be aware of their genetic weapon that threatens, called skin. Come on now. I know what saving snacks from school tastes like for dinner. Mama wasn't home. Mama was at work because Dad was never home, and that's his fault. But they treated us like we were the ones in prison, so is it his fault? Scattered thoughts, the things I know. Is it his fault that we had to make our beds out of our clothes? Is it his fault we felt like prisoners living in a world where we live like bored convicts? I know statistically, as a Black youth, I'm 4 times more likely to be incarcerated than my white counterparts. They already treat us like criminals. No wonder our peers don't care to commit crime. Facts check. As a Black youth, I live like I've already been incarcerated. Call us juveniles, because Uncle Sam's American dream for the colored kids is a prison cell. No White House or a white picket fence. There's a white man and a barbed wired fence. Scattered thoughts, the things I know. Our daddy's hands feel like glass. At least that's the only way that we ever felt him. Through a clear glass window. Scattered thoughts, the juveniles with clean records, but when they have records, adult prisons, I know that 58% of African American youth are sentenced to adult prisons. Scattered thoughts, I know that 1 in 3 Black men are expected to go to prison within their lifetime. That means 1 in 3 of my brothers, uncles, fathers, cousins anticipate going home. Scattered thoughts, the things I know. Dad was never home. And that's his fault. But they treated us like we were locked up too. Right now. As if we were prisoners. The juveniles with clean records. Because Dad was never home. The things I know.
Whew. like every time I hear that video, like, oh, just it just does something to me, right? So that video was just really just a great representation of just Black girls expressing their feelings from their viewpoint with the system's involvement with youth homelessness. And just like this, and many of the reasons that Michaela just previously stated, this is why it's just extremely important to engage with Black girls, because they can speak to those impacts that they have on their lives. And, you know, the ones that you may not be able to speak to. So now we're going to go into barriers for engagement, right? So we all know that there is value in engagement with Black girls, but then we do come upon where we have times where we do encounter some barriers. So we can go to the next slide. So I really want to open it up to the floor, and you guys can unmute or drop it in the chat. And I will just want to dive into this question. When attempting to engage with Black girls, what are some political, social, or cultural barriers that your organization may encounter or that you anticipate that you could encounter? So I can open it up to anybody or drop it in the chat. Helen said, oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I would say that some of the barriers that I may have is the parents. A lot of times, I'll be working with the youth and we'll be working on certain things to help the youth build in school or at home or socially. And the parent has so many issues going on that they kind of interrupt what I'm trying to do with that youth. Their mental health is not well. They're still that young child that they were years ago. So it's hard to reach the youth. And then there's also those situations where you have those parents that just feel like particular behaviors are okay. So they teach those behaviors and it's like a generational thing. So I'm trying to break certain habits that the youth may have. And they're looking at it like, well, this is what I'm taught. So those are some of the barriers that I have. But ultimately, me just being myself and being an African-American woman, it's easy for me to engage the youth. It's usually the outside parties.
Yeah, thank you for that. You did touch on so many great points, like parent involvement, right? That is a huge one. From there being a lack of engagement from Black girls. I see some really great ones in the chat. I see funding and resources, volunteers that don't look like them. Yes. Sorry, we got generational trauma, judgment, again, parental involvement. Yes, insignificant resources for housing and rental assistance. These are all just really great ones. We have time to one more to shout if anybody else wanted to answer this question. If not, that is totally fine. I'm sorry, my computer's doing something wanky. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, that's fine. Nope, yes, frustrations and that. Yeah, preconceived notions of their frustration and attitude, yes. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. That was really good one. Yeah, so when we think about barriers that Black girls face, when either they're put into leadership roles or from them being able to fully engage, right, in leadership opportunities, I want us to look at these 3 barriers that may stop Black girls from being able to engage. So when we look at political barriers, right, that can prevent them. That's just having access to opportunity. Sometimes even support, and when organizations don't have adequate funding, I know we talked about that. Somebody mentioned that in the chat. So that organizations can have Black girls and youth and young adults able to participate in the organization. Not being able to have those opportunities and different decision-making opportunities even within the organization, like they're just not there, right? Even those social barriers, right? So looking at the next one, certain stereotypes that Black girls may face, not having access to information regarding these leadership opportunities or ways in which Black girls can be trained to advance in leadership opportunities, not having a mentor or support to assist in being able to help within leadership positions. And finally, just not having something such as like basic transportation. I want to engage, but I can't get there to engage, right? Cultural barriers. So that could be both internal and external factors, such as fears of ridicule, gender inequity, racism. Those all serve as barriers to Black girls not being able to fully see themselves as leaders and being able to engage in different forms of leadership. There's also a lack of Black women in leadership roles, right? And that can be in your own organization. That can be from like what we see in the media, what we see today, right? And I know somebody mentioned that too. And also like mentors that share that same Black girls' cultural identity, right? Even think about those Black girls that have family obligations and not being able to access the leadership opportunities. Like I wish, but I got so many other obligations that I can't, right? Now, all of these things are really important when thinking about barriers and why can't Black girls effectively engage within your organization. And just start thinking, right? We're going to give you some things, but just start thinking about how can these things be navigated to help alleviate some of those barriers within your own organizations or, even in an opportunity, right? So I am going to pass it on to Lauren to go into more how can microaggressions also be a barrier to engagement.
Yeah, thanks for that, Deja. So microaggressions, the specific concept was founded and created by Dr. Chester Pierce. He was the president of the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. And specifically this term when engaging and treating young Black girls who have experienced a lot of trauma in their life. This can be one of those social barriers that creates a barricade between the service provider and the individual being treated. And so just a brief definition of microaggressions, they are brief verbal, behavioral, and environmental indignities that communicate negative racial slights and insults that potentially have harmful psychological impact on an individual, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Most of the time it's unintentionally intentional or passive aggressive, as people would see, especially with people servicing youth who are of color who are not of color. And that's where we obviously see a lot of this issue. And types of microaggressions, there are a few different types, but the ones I'll focus on today are microassaults, which are explicit behaviors intended to harm the individual, which are like name calling, avoidance of their trauma or discrimination. Those are pretty typical barriers. Micro insults, that is a term when conveying hidden insults that demean a person's racial heritage, or micro invalidations, which is denial of the historical and cultural trauma that we face as young Black girls and colored youth in general. Exclusion of certain resources and things like that that are needed in order specifically to help, because there are genetic and scientific factors that go into why we are the way we are and how we think the way we think, and it's like nobody else. And so I think excluding those factors is also a huge barrier. And then invisibility of Black girls' thoughts, feelings, and experiences as related to their ethnic heritage. White or non-African American counterparts making suggestions that are counterculture for young Black girls, claiming to understand the Black experience because of imposed history or knowing someone or working with people who are African American, or specifically working with African American women, can sometimes feel like they have an in or a foot in to be able to speak on certain things that they have absolutely no experience with, and not extending that grace where needed. Assuming that all Black people are politically liberal. And so this is where we go into confusing rapport with relationships concerning young Black girls. So a rapport is a good working experience between people where communication flows. A relationship, so that's more like of a professional level, or I kind of don't really know you yet, but I'm trying to get to know you. And then once they build that relationship, that is where it's a close, harmonious connection between people where vulnerability and trust exist. And so that's why this was a huge portion of his research when figuring out how do we engage with Black youth, but specifically towards Black women. How do we engage and apply this knowledge, knowing that these type of things are going to happen in their treatment, and how these things can have long-lasting impact on the populations that are being served, specifically young Black girls. So I will go ahead and pass it back to Deja.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren, for that. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Right. So you all heard the value of engagement. We heard some barriers to engagement. Now I want to spend some time talking about what are those benefits to engagement of Black girls with Black girls. I'm going to go to the next slide. So what are some benefits from your organization? What is the organizational gain with partnering with Black girls? Black girls who are being served by your organization, our organizations are becoming more engaged, right? We always want to see room for positive engagements from Black girls that we're serving, and you want to see them fully engaged throughout. Improve understanding of local trends, cultures, and needs. Black girls are facing challenges that may be arising in your organization that you may not totally be aware of. And what better ways to learn about those things than to hear directly from the ones that are currently being impacted that you're serving. Improved outcomes from Black girls in your organization. I'm going to say a mouthful, so just follow along a little bit. When we serve Black girls, I always encourage, if you know me and you know how I feel about this, I always look at the outcomes, right? Because we can effectively like have them in our organization. They can be a part, and you know, they could, let's say, in a way graduate, right? But what happens when they leave the organization? Like, what is the outcome? Like, what was the outcome from them being in the organization, right? So I always encourage to just look at those outcomes, right? So whenever we engage with Black girls who experience any type of trauma, we never should have them to feel like they're being re-exploited within your services. So really be paying attention and looking at your turnout rate. Really ask yourself, like, do we have a high level of Black girls that are successfully completing our program? What are some policies that you have in place that might not be working for Black girls to have that successful completion of the program? How is your organization addressing the needs of Black girls, and are their voices being heard? Are we providing additional resources and support to Black girls as they transition? Are our exit plans having continued supportive services, either with your organization or referral based? And what is implemented throughout your organization? What are some of the services that you're providing Black girls? Are those services that you're providing going to set them up for a successful life transition? So really being attentive to the Black girls that you're serving and what they're saying they need, or what's not working from them. Y'all gonna hear me say that a lot because sometimes it's really just as simple as that, right? Staff development and culture, right? Staff play an important role in supporting Black girls and making sure that the culture of the organization has that diversity, and also that Black girls leadership is in your organization. It's also at that developmental level. Enhance your program practices and focusing on Black girls. So having these voices at the table are really to improve some of those current policies and practices. Y'all don't kill me, but that might not be working for them, right? I'm gonna always draw it back to that, right? Preparing Black girls for leadership roles and transition. So not just within your organization, but also when they go out and they decide, hey, this is something that I want to continue doing, right? So you are assisting them, you are preparing them for those leadership opportunities. So by providing them that seat already at your table, that's just what's gonna help them in the long run, or assist them. I don't like saying help. Help meet the needs of Black girls to help serve all girls, right? Reduce the criminalization and adultification of Black girls. So I know that was a mouthful, so I'm sorry. We can go to the next slide. So what are the benefits of partnership for that Black girl? So for those Black girls that you're serving in your organization, and I'm gonna just read through these, right? So a sense of power and control in their life, social and emotional well-being, increased engagement and connections to their supports, represent their own interests, positive attitudes and behavior, self-determination skills, self-advocacy skills, and identity development. When looking at all these impacts, you know, these things will have on Black girls, especially when they've been impacted by sexual exploitation. I cannot just express the importance of having them at the table and the importance of approaching Black girls and putting them into leadership positions. Like this doesn't even sum up the importance of it, right? So we are going to go to the next slide. And we're going to go to the breakout room. So I'm going to pass it to Michaela to get us introduced to those.
Yes, so we're gonna move into breakout rooms. But before we move there, I'm gonna read out some questions of what we should be discussing today. So the first question is, what are the best ways to engage Black girls in your organization and to hear their voice and their experiences? What leadership opportunities, if any, are available to girls of color in your organization? And lastly, do your systems and policies support the healthy development of Black girls? If so, how have you achieved this success? If not, what challenges are you facing? And thank you so much, Stacia, for putting that in the chat. So now we're going to transition into our breakout rooms. We have 15 minutes, and then we'll bring you back for our group share out. Slide. I hope you all engage in meaningful dialogue in your breakout sessions. Now we're going to move into our group share out, which is the next slide. And I'm going to drop the questions in the chat for her. So we'll start with the first question from any group. In your breakout sessions, what were the most important takeaways, or what's something that you were really passionate about that was shared? And anyone can unmute, drop in the chat.
I'll jump in for my group breakout session. We discussed the idea of compensation for youth and their involvement in organizations and just helping and giving their opinions. Sometimes that's a huge barrier.
I agree. Yes, compensation is very helpful in my experience. In my younger adolescent years, compensation definitely drove you towards getting involved, and it definitely kept them. Great point. Anyone else that related to what was shared or had something different that rose up in the group?
Hello, everyone. I think in our group, one of the most important conversations that we had amongst all the questions were that everything needs to be youth-led, that we are not the ones driving, that they should be the drivers, and we just support them in that the best way we can. Also recognizing their strengths and recognizing that they have so much to offer. And also developing genuine relationships, that it's not like, okay, you're a worker who's going to tell me what to do. No, really them know we are really interested in you, in where you're going and where you're heading. And we want to be that person or people who can support you in that.
Absolutely. And I really resonated with that point. And, not telling them to be workers, but also not having them be used as tokenist pieces and using the same youth all the time. So I love that. Anyone else? And if not, we can move on to our second question. Any last thoughts before we move forward?
I more as a note, because I interviewed with an organization this was years ago, who serves youth more directly than like CASA does. And one of the things I always remember is they did 3 rounds of interviews, and the last round, 3 of the youth in the program did the interview, because what they're hiring was a role for someone to build out programming for those youth. And so ultimately, they wanted the final input to be whether or not the youth thought that was going to be the best person to work with them. And I thought that's the only time I've ever seen that. And I thought that was one of the best like youth-centered approaches and implementation that I'd ever seen. Also that I have never been more nervous for an interview than with the youth from the program than like any other quote unquote professional. But I thought that was a solid idea.
Yes, that is great. I love that. I actually sat in on one of those interviews for the current cultural center that I work at, and I could definitely tell the heat was cranked up, but we definitely were able to work with a great candidate that is now a coordinator at my job. So we love that. And I see dropped in the chat, we have professional development opportunities, cultural competency trainings, embedded to the onboarding process for staff. Yes, we love those. Thank you all for sharing. And now we're going to move on to the next question. So what did you hear that you will use in your programming to support Black girls in your organization? And I'm also going to challenge you and say, ask rather, what did you hear that wasn't mentioned in your programming that you want to implement to support Black girls? And anyone can feel free to jump in.
I will say that we learned the best thing to do is to ask the youth. When in doubt, ask the people that will be experts and what they need. So to incorporate the youth in a lot more of the planning, or activities, conferences, running groups to give them more leadership opportunities.
Yes, that is great because who knows youth better than youth ourselves? I really appreciate that. Anyone else that heard something in the group that really sparked something in them used for their programming? I think we have time for one more. The grand finale. If anyone else wants to share. Okay. Well, if anyone has any more thoughts, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going to move forward with our presentation, and I will pass it back to my co-chair, Deisha.
Yes, yes, yes. So you all, like, I was just smiling in the ear. I'm a nerd a little bit with this, but y'all was just saying some of the ones that were just like, when you say interview, like, I just started laughing because I'm like, yes, like some people really do not think, yes, put them youth film interviews. Yes. So that was just wonderful to hear. But we also have like the board of directors even, right? Advocacy, social media is a huge one. Like what better way to like have youth advocate events, like call out your like on social media, like hello, they're you, get them on social media. Events, that's a huge one. We're actually going to like the Gwen's Girls Equity, Black Girl Equity Summit at the end of this month, and that is a total youth-led event, which full transparency, I think that's one of my first ones where I've been to, where it's going to be like youth leading it, developing it. So I'm just super excited to go and look and check it out. So have youth-led events, like that is so important, that is so huge. Super excited for that. Focus groups, grant development, grant input on your grants, right? That you develop out. So all these are just additional ways where you can engage Black girls in organizations. So take a screenshot, make some notes, but these are just some considerations. Next slide. Models. How can you model this in your organization, right? So you can do it through the youth advisory board, peer staff, so mentors, advocates, where we're talking about like not having those mentors. Youth, internships, fellowship, consultants, like having that a youth consultant network you can tap into, youth-led organizing. So all these are different ways in which you can model that in your organization. We can go to the next slide. So here are some recommendations. 1 second, sorry, to move this out my way. Okay, so here are some recommendations for organizations that are serving Black girls, right? So first is the awareness. Instead of relying on data that focuses on the personal experiences of white, cisgender, and often middle-class girls, leadership, research, and policymaking should also center on the needs and strengths of girls of color. Black girls really need to be positioned as expert. I told y'all gonna keep hearing me say that throughout this entire presentation. That's with their feedback, that's with their reflections and questions about their different experiences, and having that expertise as a valuable resource for curriculum, program, and policy changes moving forward. Activation. I never know if I'm saying that right, but I think it's activation. We're just gonna say it is. To combat bias and discrimination, investments in training on anti-bias, gender equity, and social change are needed in order to support Black girls in leadership development. So in addition, really having those trainings that is focused on culturally responsive, girl-centered leadership and development also needs to be included and implemented. Action, right? Providing support to Black girls requires a holistic approach that combines anti-racist, healing-focused, gender-exclusive approaches to leadership. This also requires a commitment to organizational transformation. I'm gonna say that one more time. Organizational transformation, and really addressing some of your current practices and policies and procedures through an intersectional and justice-centered lens. It also requires a mission-driven commitment to ensure that all of your organizational leadership and staff engage in trainings and develop practices that examine and integrate the implicit and explicit systems of bias and oppression. So those are just some recommendations for organizations that are currently serving Black girls. Next slide, please. So approach to partnership with Black girl. And I really want to lean into this intersectional approach. So intersectionality requires recognition of the voices of Black girls that are directly impacted. Because they are frequently excluded from the mainstream conversation, valuing their voice means lifting up, promoting, and supporting the leadership of Black girls that are most affected by policies and practices, and centering their suggestions and values into any given project and media advocacy. Valuing voice allows Black girls affected by policies to play a substantial role in building their own story. We know that intersectionality is a concept that is used to address the many different ways in which different forms of discrimination can and do interact with one another, or in a similar description of intersectionality, is simply the way multiple oppressions are experienced. And we're talking about combating the trafficking of Black girls and forming this partnership. We cannot box the experiences of one survivor into speaking into the experiences of all girls and youth and young adults who have been a victim to this crime. And really just understanding that we must consider all of their identity to interact, and acknowledging that a Black girl's experiences are different and unique. And it means that your programming or programs need to consider some specific needs or of those Black girls that you're serving in your organization. And not just really assuming, that, and I know sometimes it doesn't happen, but sometimes it's unintentional, right? That we assume that they all need the same services, or that every same approach or style, even to leadership, is going to be the same when really it's not. And really consider all of those factors to leadership that we discussed here today. I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to pass it over to Toyin to talk about how can we create a safe space when we engage with Black girls.
Thank you so much, Deja. Now to talk about creating safe spaces with engagement of Black girls. We have a general definition here that I'll read, and then we'll go more in depth with what this means to us. So safe spaces refers to an environment whereby youth can contribute or participate in economic, social, political issues without discrimination, harassment, or bias. So I'd like to turn it over to the team now to hear their perspective on creating a safe environment for Black girls to be engaged in. What does this look like to you, and what might be some things that organizations can consider?
Sure, I'll start us off. So what it means to me to create a safe space for Black girls is to be able to show up authentically and engage in that space that's just for them. And I think the quote that you stated was so perfectly said. Like, it is just as perfectly said, first of all. And I feel like it's just as equally as important for organizations to realize when they are authentic about having these spaces, that they understand that not every space is going to be for everyone. And being able to respect these spaces for Black girls who share their identity and unique challenges. And what this means, and this just really means for any organization that is really committed to equity, and just remembering that these group spaces are not meant to be segregation, they're solidarity for those Black girls.
In my opinion, what I believe makes a safe space for Black girls is somewhere where they're allowed to struggle and even fail, but are given the room to not be condemned or treated poorly for that. So whether it's being in a program that's meant to help Black girls get a job, or work on their mental health, or things of that nature. Sometimes resources meant to help Black girls can be carceral in how they go about that, especially when they are working with Black girls who struggle with these things, sometimes for reasons that are out of their control. So a safe space for Black girls has to be a space that both helps them grow and does not condemn them for not making certain milestones in line with things that they aren't always able to help.
Yes, well said, everyone. And to me as well, having Black girls as part of the conversation and expressing and voicing their needs is what I see safe spaces as too. And, just a safe space that they can trust they'll be heard, feel seen, and validated. Organizations should definitely consider implementing more practices that center and focus Black girls' needs and prioritize making them feel more included and protected. And with that, we'll definitely head more and talk more about this into the next slide, where I'll be talking about how to create those safe spaces. Thank you. And now to discuss some of those goals that we get from a safe space. We want to make sure we're creating a secure and inclusive space that fosters collective healing. We're really acknowledging hardship and focusing on restoration of resources and an ongoing practice of accountability to help heal. We also want to talk about the environment should feel open and judgment-free so Black girls can feel secure enough to share their thoughts, values, and opinions. And how do we ensure these spaces are safe? By making it more inclusive to Black girls. And to do that, we must make it a necessity to acknowledge, embrace, and understand cultural backgrounds. Understanding the cultural aspect is how we can best serve and center Black girls' needs. We also foster safe spaces by respecting their identities, opinions, and lived expertise. And with that comes giving them autonomy and agency and letting youth lead so that they can be in charge of directing their own narrative. And let's head to the next slide, please. And just here are some key considerations to take when engaging with Black girls, starting with racial equity and intergenerational power sharing, where we're working to address and eliminate those racial hierarchies and empower future generations with knowledge from the last. And as people were saying in the chat as well, avoiding tokenism and exploitation, really making large and genuine efforts to actually center equity, inclusion, and fair practices. Also ensuring that equitable compensation and career pathways are made available. So really paying Black girls what they're worth. And next, creating spaces for youth to feel physically and psychologically safe, eliminate adultism, so really getting rid of those prejudices and discrimination against youth and validating youth's experiences. We want to make sure we're building and maintaining trust. You get the most engagement from a group when they feel they're in a secure environment to do so. So really focus on fostering that foundation of trust. Respect youth and young adults for their ideas and expertise, really recognizing that we each have value and something special to bring to the table. We also want to make sure we're setting youth and young adults up for success, communicate with youth, not at youth. So really treating them fairly and equal, and again, coming from a place of respect and understanding. And we also, lastly, want to reduce barriers and provide accessible information, making equitable resources more accessible and working to remove roadblocks that impede success. And with that, I will pass it on to Daisha.
Yes, so thank you so much, Toyin, for all that wonderful information. Now at this time, we are going to open it up to Q&A. If anyone has questions they would like to ask any of us on the team, now is the time to do so. If there's no questions, any comments, anything, if not, you at the end of this presentation, we will have our contact information available. So do not hesitate to reach out to any of us. We are more than welcome to answer any questions that you may have. So we go ahead to the next slide. So here we just have some resources for you all that we'll put in the chat. We also linked our video series, and if you have not heard about our video series, please go check that out. It's very informative. It's a 3-part video series where we really dive into combating and preventing sex trafficking of Black girls, and that is led by the GAP team. So I advise you to go check that out. Next slide. We just have our contact information, and in a minute here, we will get the evaluation link and fill it out. But otherwise than that, thank you so much to all of you who came out and was here and was authentically showed up. It was in this space. We definitely appreciate you all, and we look forward to seeing you all next time.